Okay, so I suppose this evening we're here, and we're here really for National Work Life Week, and I think we've really all agreed to sort of come together as a group this evening and I suppose just have a conversation really about work life, and from the perspective, I suppose, of National Work Life Week does tend to focus a lot around flexibility within the workplace. And I suppose what flexibility in the workplace does allow for, it allows for a work-life balance. And I suppose without, as we know, without a work-life balance, I don't know, we can sometimes, I don't know, maybe become a bit resentful of our work, or we can have low morale. And I think a lot of the time that isn't actually down to the job we're doing that creates that resentment. It's maybe down to that flexibility, or sometimes that bit of time we need out for ourselves. And I think that can work the other way as well. Sometimes if we're maybe, I don't know, at home too much with not a lot of additional opportunity within the workplace, we can actually sometimes the other way feel a bit resentful of being at home and not having that growth and that maybe we're looking for as well. Okay, so I suppose rather than me really carry on with providing too much context about, I suppose, work-life balance, because I think it's fair to say we do understand what really that's about. I think probably saying that this evening, we've got Charlotte, Hayley, Vicky and Manny, who are here really to, I suppose we're here, aren't we, all to have a shared, I don't know, understanding and as well personal overviews of our experience within who we work for, which is Cavity Dental. I don't know, about our experiences in the company of flexible working and how the company itself has helped us, maybe in very personal circumstances or work related in terms of growth. So I think we've got a mix. We've got Shropshire, Gloucestershire, I think West Yorkshire, the West Midlands. Have I hit everything there, or have I missed anyone there? No. Yeah, so I think the nature of the company, isn't it? We're sort of everywhere, so that's hence why we've got that sort of diverse range of places this evening. So okay, I think what should we do? I think we should just get to it really, because we've all got our personal stories to tell. So I don't know, Hayley, I don't know why, but yeah, let's start with you. Do you want to go first and just
maybe I'm happy to. Yes, that's fine, no problem. So for myself, I'd never heard of locum dental nursing before. I didn't know it even was a thing until in 2016. My mum was terminally ill. So I live in West Yorkshire now, but I'm originally from Leicestershire. So I decided to go back to Leicestershire to spend the last few months with my mum. And I was looking for something flexible. And I came across dental nurse locuming and saw Cavity. So I thought, this is perfect. This is just what I'm looking for. So I applied and I got the job, and it really enabled me at that time to fit in and around mum and have time with her and support her and my dad going to appointments. And yeah, very, very good for me at the time. It was just what I was looking for. And my manager at the time was very supportive in that, and gave me any time after I needed, etc., to be with my family. And then we did lose my mum, obviously, but then a couple of years later I decided I wanted to move back up here because my life's up here now, and because Cavity is a national agency, I could just transfer up here to carry on my work as a locum, and that's what I continue to do. So it's given me lots of flexibility in many ways, and I've always felt very supportive by all of the team. throughout my time with Cavity, since I moved back up here, I've been many times to West Africa to do voluntary work as a dental nurse with an organisation called Mercy Ships, which some of you might have heard of, and Cavity has supported me all the way through that. So I've been back and forth, ended up being in lockdown out there, and my partner's actually African, and I've been able to go and visit him a few times as well. And if I had a permanent job, I'd never be able to do the other things in my life that I want to do. So I'm very grateful for that, and for me it's perfect for my lifestyle. But also my daughter lives further north, and there was one particular time when I wanted to go and visit her, but she had to work. So I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could work? So I said to my manager, is there any chance I could work up around the northeast for a few days? And yeah, I managed to pick up a few days up there, which was great as well. So for me personally, it's like the perfect job because I've got the flexibility and the freedom that I want, and I feel for the first time that I'm in charge of what I'm doing, and you know, I can pick and choose what I do basically. I'd recommend it to anybody because of the flexibility. Yes.
Hayley, and that's a really, you know, I think what you started talking about there, that's a really personal, you know, account to share of I suppose, a moment of your time with Cavity. And but I think within that, what you're saying is, you know, there was that time and you got that time to spend with your mum, and I suppose support your dad through that as well. And
yes,
you know, that undoubtedly couldn't have been an easy time.
That's correct.
Okay, and
yeah,
I think you go on to say, I suppose as well, you know, about that. I mean, we talked, didn't we, at the start about that location thing. You know, we're such, I suppose, a diverse. We're sort of across that the UK, so and you've experienced that in terms of being able to move where you're working.
Yes.
Okay. No, Hayley, thanks for sharing sort of that.
Welcome. Happy to share.
I don't know, Vicky, I mean, similar, isn't it, to Hayley in terms of location, West Yorkshire? Yeah. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I was working as a dual practice manager, which I started in 2010. And then in 2016, I actually found myself being made redundant from one of the practices. I obviously wanted to continue as a practice manager, so obviously looked for some jobs that were being advertised locally, but couldn't really find anything that fit in around the days that I wanted to continue doing my practice management. And we had a visit in the practice from one of the area managers who came in to introduce herself and drop some information in. Again, a bit like Hayley, I didn't sort of even consider locum dental nursing as an option. I was kind of thinking I've either got to give up my practice management and take a full-time job somewhere. So I got in touch with the area manager, explained the sort of situation that I found myself in, and we obviously had a chat over the phone. She gave me some more details about the company and how things worked, and then sort of had a meeting with her and an interview induction, sorted all the paperwork out, and actually before I worked my redundancy period within the practice, I had Cavity lined up to come across and join, pretty much straight from finishing at the practice. So it kind of took that stress out of finishing, being made redundant, and actually not having anything lined up or anywhere to go. And so I continued then as a practice manager, and working 2 days for Cavity as a locum nurse, which obviously when we went through COVID, Cavity really sort of stepped in and helped my role as a practice manager. when we came back to work after the initial lockdown, a member of staff actually handed her notice in. So at that time, it was really difficult to recruit anybody. Anybody new that we took on, had we gone to another lockdown, we wouldn't have been able to furlough them. So I contacted my area manager, and I explained the sort of situation to her. And after a sort of open and honest discussion with her about the situation that I was in my practice, they allowed me to drop one of my days on a temporary basis so that I could obviously work at the practice until such a time that we could recruit a new member of staff and get, you know, back up to a full team there. Obviously, had I worked at another practice, I wouldn't have had the flexibility to do that. They wouldn't have given me the support to go off and, you know, sort of basically bridge the gap in the practice that I was managing, because it would have left them short. So obviously they, you know, take into account people's personal circumstances and what's going on in people's lives, and try and give that support and flexibility for people to be able to do what they need to do. So then earlier this year, I was obviously given the opportunity to move across to the health and wellbeing team, and the training team within Cavity. So I now work solely for Cavity 4 days a week. I've given up my job as a practice manager. And with this position that I'm in, I'm mainly working from home in the role I do, which I do here in my office. I hear my neighbours going out to work every morning, something that obviously I've done for many years. But you know, I have to say there are sort of swings and roundabouts for this way of working. With the role that obviously we're doing, I manage my time on a sort of day-to-day basis, depending on the needs of the role. And you know, it does get managed differently than having the set hours of sort of 9 to 5. It gives me the flexibility on how I approach my working hours, but obviously with the nature of the job, I have to be flexible in the way that I manage that. Obviously, since I've joined the health and wellbeing and the training team, it's opened up sort of other opportunities for me in terms of professional development and career progression, which I've really enjoyed, you know, having the opportunities to do that, as well as now having the sort of flexibility in my week and how my week is worked. About 8 years ago, I gave up working a Friday. When I was in practice, the opportunity came up for me to do that. I was only working half a day on a Friday, but as I say, when the opportunity came up to drop that half day, and I was spending 2 hours travelling to work for a 4.5 hour session. But that then gives me, you know, the ability to be available and offer cover on a Friday if we need it, or if there are things within the role that I need to do on a Friday. I get the chance to do that as well.
I think for you, Vicky, wasn't it like really specific, like your flexibility to a degree was that, you know, you did work somewhere else 2 days and you worked for Cavity for 2 days. And like recently, that was how it worked for you to have that sort of 2 different areas of work, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Going.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, I mean, like you say, you work a 4-day week and, you know, that works for you, but that flexibility sometimes, if needs be, you know, if you want to pick up that Friday, there's possibly always something that you could do, but actually it's, as a company, isn't it, understanding that for yourself, a 4-day week works, and
it does.
Actually, yeah. You get there to enjoy a long weekend, and you choose to do that, and I think it's about that. It's about having those choices, like, isn't it, Hayley? You say going on the Mercy ships is part of you know, what you enjoy, who you are really. It's a big part of yourself and what you want to give. And, you know, when there aren't pockets of time to do those things, that's when sometimes people, like I said at the start, there can start to be a resentment and low morale. And it's very likely that that isn't about the job itself. It's a sort of room to move and breathe sometimes. And I think there is one thing, and I suppose hearing it a little bit here, that there is often, as long as we're communicating what we want to be doing or what we need, there is that room to breathe and find some time for you within work. Okay. Don't know, Charlotte, do you want to? You're on, and yeah, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
Thank you, Vicky. Thanks for that.
So my story is kind of a little bit of Hayley, a little bit of Vicky, sort of mixed into one. But I started Cavity back in, it was like end of 2015, I think. I was moving from Malvern area down to Surrey. I was only going to be there for 4 or 5 months, not even 6 months. So I didn't want to take obviously a permanent job and then tell them, oh, I'm leaving like 4 months later. That's not very fair. And then a hygienist I used to work with actually mentioned Cavity specifically. She had some Cavity nurses before another practice, and she suggested it to me. And I thought that would be absolutely perfect because I'm moving to Surrey. I don't know Surrey at all. It would be great to sort of like get out there rather than sort of like being stuck in one area. And then I knew I was going to be moving to Birmingham. So I thought, oh, I'll do Cavity and then I'll move to Birmingham and I'll find a practice. But I loved working for Cavity so much that I just carried on when I was in Birmingham. When I moved to Birmingham, I knew literally nobody. I had the person that was closest to me that I knew was in Worcester. So it was a good 45-50 minutes away. It was Cavity was great because it meant that I was going out to lots of different practices. I was meeting lots of different people. One of my best friends, one of my closest friends, is actually another nurse that I met. I went and worked at her practice really quite often. I think I was there sort of like 4 or 5 days a week for quite a few weeks, well, quite a few months actually. And we're really, really close and very good friends now. So that's great. I've made like a best friend out of working through Cavity. But I found it was great because, like I said, it meant that I could go around and explore Birmingham a little bit because I'm not a city girl. I'm very much a country bumpkin. So I was quite scared moving to Birmingham. It's massive. There's cars everywhere. And it actually helped me feel more confident being on my own, like having the best time in Birmingham, meeting lots of different people. But I think I did start to work a little bit too much. So I was working 5 days a week. Sometimes I was working a Saturday as well. I have a tendency to not be able to say no. So I can find it quite hard to turn something down or say no to you know, a shift change or anything like that, or something that's a little bit too far out of my radius. But and I found myself not hating Cavity, but just hating being a dental nurse. It's always early mornings, it's quite late nights, often, you know, weekends as well. And I started to become quite lonely because I wasn't seeing my friends. And yeah, so I started to take a look at how I was working. And when I then ended up moving to Gloucestershire with my boyfriend back in September 2020, I decided to really take advantage of the fact that it is flexible working hours, and I can have more control over the days and the hours that I work. And I dropped a Friday every other week at the moment. It might go to every week. I find that Fridays are like the best day to have off because I feel like you're really winding down So you sort of like start work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're working, and then I feel like on the Friday you've got time to, you know, from Thursday night, you've got that Friday feeling a day early, which is good. And I feel like all the things I wasn't able to do or felt like I couldn't do, like get a doctor's appointment. It's really hard to get doctor's appointments at all these days. But I felt like knowing that I had a Friday coming up that I wasn't working, I was able to start booking things in advance, which I'd never done before. Obviously, I go to the hairdressers for my hair, and it doesn't take 5 minutes to do this. And getting a hair appointment on a Saturday is, you guys probably know, completely impossible unless you're like booking months and months ahead. And yeah, my hairdresser would never have 6 hours to fit me in on a Saturday. So having that Friday really helps, even just for small things like that. So that work-life balance is there for me now because of the flexibility and being able to take a step back, you know, see my friends on the Friday, not feel like I'm cramming everything in on a Saturday, and then on Sunday feeling like I really want to wind down. I don't want to be doing anything. But I'm still having to cram all these things in on the Sunday, when actually what I want to do is just get my stuff ready for work and just sit in front of the TV and do nothing with my cats and just chill out. And I feel like I can do that now because of Cavity. I actually ended up approaching the wellness team because I was struggling quite a bit after having COVID for a second time earlier on this year. I just felt really overwhelmed with work. I felt like I was working too much. I didn't have enough time because I am quite busy. I get booked in 5 days a week. So I think I spoke to Claire, and Claire sort of like, you know, made me feel a lot better, which was great. And then I then approached my area manager, and she suggested to me maybe dropping a day somewhere. And in my silly brain, I didn't think that it was possible to be able to do things like that. I thought I'd be letting people down, you know, if I wasn't working 5 days a week and available every single day. But I feel like after she spoke to me and said, no, it's fine. Remember, it's flexible hours. Like, it's up to you when you work. And all of a sudden I just had this realization, and I sort of really jumped on it. And so, yeah, I dropped my Friday every other week, possibly every week soon. And like Vicky, I've also joined the training team as well. So I'm now a qualified assessor. And I feel like if I was working 5 days a week every week, I would never have done that. I would never have done the training to become an assessor and, you know, have something else to add to my CV and, you know, progress in dentistry and in my job role. I would never have done that if I didn't have that Friday, because I feel like I wouldn't have had time, because I would have just been coming home from work, getting on with that, and then spending my whole weekends doing that. So actually being able to drop that day, even if it is just every other week, I feel I would never have done that. I would never have, you know, pursued something else and sort of, you know, jumped on that. So I'm just really grateful for the flexible hours, and I feel like I do have like a work-life balance now, thanks to Cavity and the way that they work and how understanding they are of mental health and that work-life balance.
Thank you, Charlotte. And I think one thing that really struck me there when you were talking was actually how for quite a long time you possibly did carry on working those 5 days. And actually it was only after having that courage, really, I suppose, to, like you say, we did talk, didn't we, at that time, and after that conversation then you proceeded to talk to your manager, that actually the conversations you embarked on having actually then did lead to you seeing that, yeah, there was room to change, actually, you know, what you were working and how you were working. And I think, like you say, that I suppose the adjustments you've made have allowed and created that time for you to then, I suppose, develop in another way, which is, like you say, to your assessor training. And I mean, that's a big part of our work-life balance, isn't it? Actually, growth as well in our knowledge and learning.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I think I probably, you know, I did. I mean, obviously, I don't really want to sit reading from notes, but you know, I did make a note, and I've probably made a note because I don't know why, because I've said it so many times, but I think it was so important not to forget about. I mean, looking at this, you know, I actually see Cavity really as quite and this is a really personal reflection on how I see the company, and I think just from what we've heard already, it definitely rings true, because I would personally, and it is personal, like I say, define Cavity as a really like person-centered sort of company. And I've written it just so I can be clear in articulating it really, rather than sometimes I can waffle a bit. And I suppose when I say a person-centered company, like what I do mean by that is that everyone within the company sort of is seen and heard, and the opportunities are there to be seen and heard as an individual. And I think, you know, in this day and age and within companies now, you know, I think it's just a really great asset that we have that in place. And I think at the end of the day, when personal situations are heard, when people are listening to personal situations, and when there is understanding around that, it's actually at that point people can move forward, whether that be, you know, your managers or the health and wellbeing team. Everybody can just start working together to make sort of those adjustments, you know, reasonable adjustments. But I think as long as that communication's being had, there's always that opportunity to put things in place. And I think that is one of the beauties within Cavity. And I think the listening and the understanding is really at the heart of that. And I think, you know, like you said, Charlotte, you know, that, you know, you sort of to a degree experienced that conversation, that listening and understanding. And like you said, Hayley, with your manager, you know, at the start with everything you're going through with your mum, you know, your manager was there, and they worked with you to ensure you did have that time. And I think at the end of the day, Vicky, you've echoed that as well. You know, you were there as a practice manager. I mean, I think there's going to be many practice managers thinking that time with COVID and staffing was just so stressful. Okay, just I'm going to actually just in the middle of this recording say I can just realise that you're all actually on mute. Vicky, Vicky, are you on mute?
I am, yeah.
I am now, but I wasn't. I don't think I was before.
I
think as well, because there was a bit of sort of a feedback noise. So what we normally do is put ourselves on mute.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Okay.
For Charlotte and I, it's just second nature to do.
Yeah. Okay.
I keep going for a coughing fit, so I'm just keep having to mute myself.
Went a bit off track there, but I was conscious that maybe all on mute. But I think really that's what I was just probably wanting to just say in that moment there, that really that sort of like person-centered approach really to, you know, that everybody is individual, and really at the heart of that, listening and understanding and moving forward from there. Okay. Yeah, Manny, do you want to? I don't know. Yeah, go next.
Okay, so I joined Cavity about just over 7 years ago, and up until a few years ago, I was working with them full-time, 5 days a week, nursing, no weekends, because that was my time. It was my time to socialise with family, with friends, and just have time for me, do the things that I wanted to do, my hobbies. And I think with agency, you know, you don't have those stresses of work to take home after the end of the day. You can go home and, for me personally, stress-free of work, and enjoy your evenings. So I kind of had the perfect work and life balance at that time. And I think probably coming up to 2 years now, that kind of all changed. Dad had an accident which resulted in an amputation of his leg. So obviously at that point, my focus was my dad, my mum, who I live with, and I needed to be there. I wanted to be there for mum. Dad was in lockdown hospital, I'll say at that time, for about 7 weeks. So work were amazing. I spoke to my manager at that time. She helped me. There was no stress of work. It was never, when are you coming to work? Do you know when you can do this shift? Can you do that shift? I was just, left for my time to deal with what I needed to deal with at home. So I was off work, so not working at all for about 2 months in total. I came back to work sort of part-time, with shifts and days and hours to work around what my dad needed, and my mum at that time. There was support from work. I had someone from the Health and Wellbeing Department contact me and to let me know that they were there for me to talk to, which was great. I did use that opportunity as well. And sometimes you don't want to talk to family because they're all involved in everything you're going through. So that was a big, how can I say, big help, advice. Yeah, just someone there to talk to, which was nice. Helped me put a plan into place with me coming back to work. There was still no pressure from Cavity to do anything extra. And I think even up till now, 2 years after the accident, I'm still trying to find a work life balance. It's getting there. I do about 4 days a week now. There are still medical appointments. There's certain things that we're still going through. But I've learned to look after myself as well. And yeah, I think with the support of Cavity, I don't think I would have done it.
So, I mean, obviously, Manny, we do work alongside each other within the health and wellbeing department, don't we? And, I'm, aware of, I suppose, the journey you have been on, and obviously sharing that, this evening. It's fair to say you've been through a lot. And I just think, again, you're to a degree echoing, really, aren't you? You're echoing that at the end of the day, that support and that time that was given to you, and not even given, at the end of the day, I think anybody going through that needs that time. But I think because the way you communicated what you need, that made it easier for Cavity to support you. And I think that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the key, I think, that communication between, work. Definitely.
Manny, thank you for sharing that with us, and your experience, from that angle of what you've been through and how Cavity have supported you and allowed that flexibility. And like you say, you do yourself as well, have that day, don't you?
Yeah.
For what is important, that's sort of self-care.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I suppose, you know, talked about a range of things there. I think we've talked about, I suppose, family, you know, when we need to actually be there, not necessarily for ourselves, but other people. And, you know, life does have significant events, and, you know, that needs to be supported. We can't always just keep going to work and putting our face on. We know we can do that, but at certain times, you know, we do need to be honest and just say and communicate and try and find somewhere within our work that bit of time for ourselves. But I think as well on, you know, I suppose positive, you know, elements is the sort of location, isn't it? I mean, Hayley and Charlotte, you've talked about actually sometimes you've needed to work in a different area, and actually you've been able to just work somewhere different. I'm conscious the recording probably this evening is coming to a close, and, you know, I might not get to touch on my experience fully, but, you know, my own personal experience was as a student joining Cavity, and obviously it was allowing me to study alongside still having, you know, an income. And I don't believe I would have ever been able to have such a successful, to a degree, study pathway. And when I say successful, I say being able to sit and apply time to my study as much as I did. If I'd been in maybe another workplace setting, because there was obviously that flexibility there to have that day off in the week, and if there was assignments due in or some additional work, I could plan that with my manager. And, you know, for me, that was, you know, I couldn't really thank Cavity enough for that probably three-year period while I was, you know, intensely studying there. So I think in all our own ways, really, tonight we've sort of demonstrated quite a diverse range in how flexibility and work-life balance can happen. But I think probably all in agreement, it comes down to communication, doesn't it? We have to have that courage to talk to our about what we need. And I think the culture of talking openly and honestly is there here. And obviously that's why we've had the experience we've had. But I mean, I can't thank you enough for joining in the conversation this evening, but I'm conscious the recording is going to come to an end. A time limit has come up. So yeah, thank you for joining and sharing your experiences. It's good to catch up with you all.
Thank you.
Okay.
It was lovely to see you all and hear all your stories. It's great.
Yeah, and there's some common
likewise.
themes.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to say is why I love my job so much as well as a locum is just the variety, you know, being in a different place each day, with meeting so many different people, doing different things. That's what I really like about it, the variety.
Hayley, that is an excellent way to end, because that's true. I think we've all experienced that.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Quite a privilege, really. I think.
It is.
Yeah, it really is. Lovely way to end. It's been great to spend time this evening with you all. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.